Part 115. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1150. Latest website. As Lu Feng listened to Wei Yandan talking about what happened on the phone, his face turned extremely ugly. He shouted at the phone, "You're a coward, damn, you're so coward. Are you going to let them intercept you like this? Do you think I'm a fool? Let Su Yurong contact you and tell those people that if this matter cannot be resolved, I will definitely take revenge. I will go back in the evening." The phone signal was not very good. Lu Feng almost yelled at the phone and hung up the phone. The place was silent and all eyes were fixed on Lu Feng. "Mom, I have to go. There's something urgent that needs to be dealt with," Lu Feng said to his mother. Gao Jiwei, who was on the side, saw Lu Feng was about to leave and said hurriedly, "Today is the first day of the Lunar New Year and there is no flight back to Shenzhen. I just want to go back to the city first. We can leave as soon as we have the tickets. It will take us a long time gone." "No, I have my own plane. Let someone know and it will take off soon. Let's meet up when we have time," Lu Feng said to Gao Jiwei and prepared to go back and pack his things. My own plane, Gao Jiwei was already dumbfounded on the spot. He knew that when Lu Feng left GMA Food, it meant that the gap between the two would become wider and wider, but he did not expect that in a few years' time will be so big. "Xiao Feng, why is it so urgent? Let's spend another night at home." My mother was a little anxious. She had to leave in just a few days. "It's really urgent." Lu Feng glanced at the scene and said in a deep voice, "I'm sorry, everyone, that's the end of your business. You should leave as soon as possible. It's a cold day. I'll go back and pack my things." Gao Jiwei couldn't think of anything that made him so anxious, so he couldn't help but ask, "What on earth is going on? Can I help?" "You can't help, it's a matter with the United States." After Lu Feng said this, he went back to his house silently to get his landline phone and notify the plane's maintenance staff to prepare, and he simply packed up his things. Wang Dong, Wang Erfang, and others were standing at the door and were dumbfounded. What Lu Feng said seemed to be beyond their understanding. They couldn't imagine that a young man could have any entanglements with the United States. This shouldn't be news. What's the situation in the network? 10 minutes later, Lu Feng packed up his things and said goodbye to his parents, then got into Gao Jiwei's car and went straight to the airport without looking back. The journey to the airport was Gao Jiwei's last chance. In the car, Gao Jiwei talked about his plans. If he wanted to expand his company, it would be best to go international. After hearing this, Lu Feng objected, "In recent years, it is not suitable for expansion investment. It would be good if it can be stabilized. The financial crisis, it is coming soon, raw materials will skyrocket, currencies will depreciate, and the market will slump, so don't be too optimistic about the next few years." "What?" Gao Jiwei looked at Lu Feng in surprise. He would never believe this if it were said by others. The market is so good now. The sales of snacks during the holidays are extremely hot. How could it happen suddenly? Stop. But these words came from Lu Feng's mouth, and he had to consider them carefully. "I'm entrusting you with something. I'm going to sell half of the equity I hold in GMA Foods and find a suitable price. Just tell me the price when the time comes and the money will go directly to my card." Lu Feng looked at Gao Jiwei's expression. Somewhat worried, she said to him, "Don't worry, there won't be much fluctuation in the mainland, it's just not suitable for expanding investment. Let's restart this matter after we cross the century. You should take good care of GMA Food. If you play it safe, nothing will go wrong. Is the overseas market so unsatisfactory? I always thought that the overseas market was a blue ocean." Gao Jiwei said with some frustration, "I have done research on overseas markets. Overseas markets are very good, and there is a lot of money there, but you have to understand one thing. There is no fairness in this world. This is true between people, and even more so between countries, Lu Feng said solemnly. If there is a financial crisis, there will be no turmoil, right? Gao Jiwei thought of something and asked hurriedly. Don't worry about this matter. It's not something you should worry about. After Lu Feng gave the order, he was afraid that he would have management problems at that time, so he said seriously, remember this sentence, kindness cannot control soldiers, justice cannot control wealth, be cruel when you should be cruel. The subsequent mass layoffs led to a shortage of domestic jobs. Many companies could not make money. Soft-hearted bosses gritted their teeth and kept their employees. In the end, the companies went bankrupt. On the contrary, those companies that crazily squeezed their employees, lowered their wages, and laid off employees survived. More than an hour later, Lu Feng's plane was ready. As Lu Feng arrived at the airport, he said goodbye to Gao Jiwei and boarded the plane. Gao Jiwei watched the plane soar into the sky. He was a little envious, but he also felt that Lu Feng was under greater pressure now. He seemed to have lost the calmness he had when he was at GMA Food. At that time, Lu Feng was like a knife to kill a chicken. But Gao Jiwei feels that what this powerful sword is going to do now is to slay dragons. After Lu Feng left, a group of people at home didn't know what to do. The matchmaker looked at Lu Feng's parents. Now that Lu Feng was gone, he didn't know if there would be anything more to this matter. No matter how you say it, I have been busy from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. I need to give the matchmaker some money. The matchmaker lacked confidence. Lu Feng's parents stood there silently for a long time before sighing and walking towards the house. Lu Feng's father began to understand one thing, that is, his son was no longer the son they knew, and he was definitely not the same son as before. Lu Feng just became rich. A man who can own his own plane, doing things they only hear about in the news, is a forbidden place for their imagination. Wang Dong had had enough trouble. He looked at Wang Erfang coldly and snorted disdainfully, "You are worthy of marrying someone else. How dare you think about it? There is no grass growing on your ancestral graves." After speaking, Wang Dong spat on the ground and turned around and left. Only Wang Erfang's family was left standing there in a daze. Facing the mutterings of the neighbors, they left dejectedly. Lu Feng was right. The fate of this small town girl had already been imprinted on this small town. This world, absolutely most people are like this in this era. No matter what they look like, they are born here and die here. Except for a few lucky ones, most of them reach the same destination through different paths, and it has nothing to do with personal efforts. This is the fate of small people in a big era. No matter you are struggling or shouting, nothing can change. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, as the plane landed, the arranged car was parked next to the tarmac. Lu Feng got off the plane and directly got in the car and rushed to the company. Wei Yandan has already contacted Su Yorong. The news from the terminal is that this batch of goods violated the laws of the United States and has been seized and detained. At the same time, the relevant companies must be traced and punished. Lu Feng listened to these words on the phone with a stern expression. Only Wei Yandan felt angry and said on the phone, "I suggest filing a lawsuit with them. The seller of these goods is not American, the buyer is not American, and the ship is not theirs. It is docked, the dock does not belong to them, and doing this is just like banditry." "What did Mr. Su say?" Lu Feng asked. "Mr. Su also wants to sue. She is negotiating with lawyers, but this matter will not affect United Capital. She used a newly registered company to handle it," Wei Yandan replied. "Tell her there's no need to press charges. It's useless. The United States has relevant laws and regulations. Anyone who has anything to do with them can be searched and seized. That's what the long-arm jurisdiction bill is. I'll be at the company in half an hour. Inform all major shareholders about this matter," Lu Feng said helplessly. When Su Yorong learned about this matter, her first reaction was anger, but after listening to the analysis of the international law lawyer, She felt helpless. It was not easy for a company or even a country to file a lawsuit against it, let alone a company. It is possible to win, and besides, such a lawsuit can last for several years, or even longer, and we cannot afford to delay it. Lu Feng asked Wei Yandan to inform the directors because he knew that the goods would not be returned and he had to let the board of directors know and report the losses to the accounts, otherwise the accounts would not be settled. Half an hour later, Lu Feng rushed to the company and convened a few important people for a meeting. Now the mobile phone is almost ready. It is expected to be officially launched on the 7th day of the Lunar New Year. Everything else in the company is normal. In the conference room, Lu Feng was smoking one cigarette after another, and Zhu Lidong seemed a bit decadent. Faced with this kind of thing, no one present could do anything. This kind of thing cannot be handled with words. I have been moving around. I don't want to fight with them. Now I have to risk my life. Lu Feng smoked a cigarette and said expressionlessly, we have no way out, regardless of Europe. We don't care what those people think, whether they are kneeling or lying on their stomachs. All I have in mind right now is, it. Zhu Lidong raised his head and looked at Lu Feng and asked, what to do? Since we are not allowed to play, then don't play. Although I don't know who lit the cannon in this matter, one thing can be confirmed. It is definitely what Nabe Shi who is responsible, Lu Feng said and took a look. The watch on his wrist showed that it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. He said, call him. New York, 8 o'clock in the morning, what Nabe has just arrived at the office. He already knows about the seizure of GFN Electronics lithography machine last night. This is definitely a highlight since he took office. Mr. President, do you have your reservation phone number? GFN Electronics, the secretary walked in and said. When Watanabe heard Lu Feng's call, he couldn't stop smiling. He sat down, crossed his legs and said, come in. The call was connected, and Lu Feng listened to the voice coming from the other side and said with a bit of schadenfreude, Mr. Lu, Happy New Year, I'm here to wish you a Happy New Year. You also know that we are celebrating the New Year. Lu Feng took a deep breath and said to the phone in front of him, are you sure you want to play like this? Are you sure you can bear the consequences? Consequences? Think about your consequences first. You have smuggled prohibited items. Under the Wassenaar agreement you just signed, you cannot import photolithography machines. Your consequences will be to be investigated by the US Judicial Department. What can I do? What consequences? Watanabe Chi chuckled and said, what is your country's international status? Are there consequences for me? It's ridiculous. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1151. Latest website. Watanabe Shi's words silenced everyone in the office. Lu Feng, Zhu Lidong, and others wanted to talk to them about integrity and rules, but they couldn't express these things. They were too pale. Talking about them was like begging for mercy. I am a Chinese, so I don't have to abide by the laws of the United States. Besides, you are not an American. You are shouting for your master all day long. It really makes people look down upon you, Lu Feng said sarcastically. I'm sorry, I got my green card more than 20 years ago. I'm American. Let me tell you one more thing. You can't handle it this time. Don't think that your small company is very powerful. In front of Wall Street, you are like paper, you will never understand the power of Wall Street. Watanabe said with pride in his voice, you are just an ant swept to the ground by this autumn wind. Really? Now that we've said that, let's wait and see. Lu Feng looked at the phone and said in a low voice, let's see how much I, an ant, can do in this storm. After Lu Feng finished speaking, he hung up the phone without waiting for him to speak. The atmosphere in the conference room was a bit dull, and the sound of Lu Feng's cigarette lighter sounded so crisp. What Nabe's so-called autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves was just an action by Wall Street against Asia. Whenever the United States needs money, or wants to buy some valuable companies at low prices, it will tighten its currency, and a large amount of US dollars will flow back to the United States, causing tight currency liquidity in some countries. Then local financial problems begin to occur, and a financial crisis breaks out. Then Wall Street started buying the dip. Only this time it's targeted at Asia. For such a massive action, GFN Electronics is really just a little ant. Lu Feng smoked silently, and no one else at the scene spoke a word. Lu Feng put half of the cigarette in the ashtray and said to everyone, "Compromising is useless. There is only one way left now, and that is to deal with him." "What should I do?" Zhu Lidong asked. "The mines that were previously in Africa should be used now. I will handle this matter. You are responsible for the normal operation of the company. In addition to ensuring the set goals this year, the mobile phone market must do well." Lu Feng looked at the person sitting there. Du Guoying, who was in the distance, said solemnly, "There is only one request, whether it is from the United States or from Fuzhang, I will deal with it to death." Lu Feng knew that as long as he fought with Wall Street, Schroeder would definitely give in. When the time came, John would find a way to force Lu Feng from the board of directors. Since this was the only way things could be done, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. After giving instructions, Lu Feng returned to the villa. When he arrived home, he found that Zhang Xiaoyan hadn't come back yet. Just as he was about to make a call, Su Yurong called. "That batch of goods is most likely wasted. I just finished talking to a few lawyers. If the United States pursues the investigation, it will also involve illegal smuggling." Su Yurong's voice was quite unhappy. This matter, the benefits she gained were few, but the risks were considerable. If they want to pursue it, they will definitely trace it to me first. Hong Kong is still in charge of the British. If they come to me before July next year, I can't stand it. I can't go back to the mainland to live permanently. For Su Yurong, if he can't stay in Xiangjiang and has no place abroad, then he really has no choice but to go to Africa to find a land without laws and watch gorillas show their teeth. No one wants to see things come to this point. I have communicated with the people at Goldman Sachs. According to international practice, you should not be held accountable. Don't worry. Lu Feng could only comfort her first. If he really wanted to put pressure on her, Su Yurong would definitely be the first to sell Lu Feng. Both the insurance company and the company that owned the ship contacted me when signing the contract. It was clearly stated that it did not involve any violation of relevant laws of various countries, so they would not pay any compensation and would also be held liable for breach of contract. This is another sum of money, you have to pay for it. Su Yurong made the responsibilities clear immediately. "No problem, but you still have to help me continue to look for companies that sell photolithography machines. There is news. I will handle it this time. Don't worry about one thing. As long as you do things for me, no matter how big it is, it will be impossible. I'll let you carry it yourself," Lu Feng reassured. Su Yurong had a wide network of contacts in Xiangjiang, so he tried to make enemies with as few people as possible at this time. After giving Su Yurong some reassurance, Lu Feng hung up the phone, and then called the big boss of the Science and Technology Commission, hoping that they would coordinate the matter through the Foreign Affairs Department, even though Lu Feng knew that the goods would not come back. And also want the country to scold it? After 2 phone calls, Lu Feng called Lambert again, hoping that the 2 parties could relax. Lambert naturally would not answer Lu Feng's call. After Eisen picked up the phone, the 2 parties only exchanged a few words and left the phone. Bye. Lu Feng made it very clear on the phone that if he didn't return the goods, he would be rude. Eisen on the other end of the phone didn't pay attention to Lu Feng's threats at all and let him be as rude as he wanted. They wanted to see. Let's see what Lu Feng can do. When things have reached this point, there is no way out. In this case, let the global tungsten mines go to heaven. South Africa, Cape Town, Ronald has been living a very good life this year. All the tungsten mines in the family's hands have been sold to GFN Electronics, and they are also taking care of it. GFN has also sent a team. Supervision, those people don't go to the mines at all. They eat a lot of fat inside and outside. In addition, GFN has been crazy about buying minerals here this year, and 80% of the local tungsten mines are in the hands of GFN. It can be said that Lufeng is the tungsten king of South Africa at the moment. Ma Wanjun, General Manager of South Africa Tungsten Industry, a wholly owned subsidiary of GFN Group Holdings, walked out of the office and hurried downstairs with several folders in his hand. After getting in the car, he went straight to the Ronald Family Group building. When he got there, he handed all the documents to the other party and said to Ronald's father, as required by the headquarters, "We now take over all the tungsten mines under the company and no longer entrust us with it. Your agent, this is the handover procedure, just sign this document." "What's wrong?" Ronald's dad stood up in a panic and asked, "Did we do something bad?" "We will definitely make back the losses last year. This year's global non-ferrous commodity prices are very good. It has nothing to do with losses. It's just that the headquarters believes that it should be controlled by itself to facilitate complementation with other industries," Ma Wanjun replied. "We can also help. These are not problems. Mr. Ma, please sit down. Please tell Mr. Lu. If you want to make some sense, it is not a problem," Ronald's father said very politely and knowingly. "This is South Africa and you're so far away, no one knows how much those mines dug." Ma Wanjun understands what the other party means, and he has taken advantage of it since he arrived, but the current situation can no longer do this. If he cannot do this in the past few days, the headquarters will immediately send someone to replace him. Ronald's father couldn't talk no matter what, so he finally moved Ronald over, and the other party called him Lufeng's brother. In the end, he even called Lufeng if the negotiation couldn't be settled. "Who is it?" Lufeng asked while sitting on the sofa and looking at the phone. "Mr. Lu, it's me, Ronald." Ronald was very polite on the phone. First he invited him to his home as a guest, and then he said that everyone missed him very much. Hearing this, Lufeng was already a little impatient before he started. "To the point. No, it must be handed over as soon as possible. This handover should be completed within 3 to 5 days as soon as possible, and I will send a team there in the next few days. If my people go and you haven't handed over the management rights of the tungsten mine, don't blame me for being rude." Lufeng's tone was quite unkind. He knew that this family was reluctant to part with the oil and water in the tungsten mine. Now that it was time to use this bomb, Lufeng would never allow anyone to let this bomb go out. "Mr. Lu, don't worry when I do something for you. We are brothers." "Brother, you are so big. If the handover cannot be completed within a few days, do you believe that I will pay some tribal chiefs to kill you?" Lufeng cursed and hung up the phone directly. It was already past 11 o'clock in the evening, and the phone calls had been constant since he returned home. Lufeng used all the connections he could use. In New York, the Foreign Affairs Department immediately filed a protest after receiving the news, asking the U.S. Maritime Department to lift the seizure of GFN Electronics goods, and condemned this behavior. What they said on the phone was very rude, but of little use. Woolen cloth? Not to mention that GFN Electronics is a private enterprise. Even if it happens to a state-owned enterprise now, it can only hold it in. But if you hold it in and feel unhappy, you can still call and curse. At 12 o'clock in the evening, Ma Wanjun called and said that the other party wanted to authorize the procedures, because there were many owners of these minerals and they needed Duoduo's signature for authorization. Ronald was trying to delay it now. "I understand. Write him a copy now and I'll fax it to you tomorrow." Lufeng hung up the phone and began to draft the relevant authorization letter. Lufeng was Duoduo's father and had custody rights, and Duo had no capacity for civil conduct, so Lu Feng, as the guardian, could authorize Duo on his behalf. On behalf of Duo, Lu Feng authorized the full management of the minerals to himself, and then used the authorization to Ma Wanjun, asking him to take over the management of the minerals there. At 1 o'clock in the evening, the Science and Technology Committee called to ask Lu Feng about the impact of this incident. The impact is still very big. If we can't buy a lithography machine in the next year, we don't know whether the chip will be born. It's also unknown whether I can control GFN electronics in the next year. Lu Feng looked slightly depressed. Road. We will help you find relevant models of photolithography machines as soon as possible. International suppression cannot provide any substantial help. What are you going to do? I will do it internationally, but I still have some backup. The price of tungsten ore may skyrocket this year, Lu Feng said calmly. Latest website. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1152. Latest website. The night is already deep, and this night is destined to be a sleepless night for the top management of GFN. In the United States, the major investment banks on Wall Street have been very busy recently. Whenever there is turbulence or imminent turmoil in a certain part of the global economy, they will reap the rewards and they will withdraw their funds as early as possible. Lambert has also held several high-level meetings. He has no interest in currency exchange rates, so he will not participate in some subsequent meetings. Lambert believes that he is very good at stocks, futures, and industrial investors. Well, as for shorting currency exchange rates, that is becoming an enemy of a country. Even if they make a lot of money, they will definitely be regarded as mortal enemies by those countries. If one of these countries is needed in the future, it will be doomed. As soon as Lambert returned to the office, Eisen knocked on the door and came in. Although he told Lu Feng on the phone that Goldman Sachs didn't care about his counterattack, Eisen had to report it as usual. What's the matter? Lambert turned back to look at Eisen and said smoothly, ask them to bring in a cup of coffee. Mr. Lu from GFN Electronics called a few hours ago. He asked us to lift the seizure, Eisen replied. You didn't tell him that this matter was done by the Maritime Department and has nothing to do with us. Lambert leaned on the chair and said. I did, but he said that we and the customs are a unit in this matter. Don't tell him that the top executives of Wall Street investment banks are from the China National Bank of China. The senior advisors of the major Wall Street investment banks are all candidates for the Federal Reserve. This matter is Wall Street and the top executives of the United States work together to do this. If the seizure is not lifted, he will make us pay the price. After finishing speaking, Eisen shrugged his shoulders and spread his hands as if to say that this was indeed funny. Lambert frowned a little, and then asked, by paying the price, does GFN Electronics make us pay the price, or does it mean the top management of China? Even the top management of China can't make us pay the price. Eisen couldn't help laughing and said, what's more, Lu Feng doesn't have that much energy, just for more than $20 million in goods. Lambert thought for a while and thought that what Eisen said was right, not to mention that GFN Electronics was just one of the caterpillars, and they planned to suppress the entire Asia. The next day GFN Electronics sent a team to South Africa. This time there were more than 100 people in total, more than half of whom were experienced in mining management. Lu Feng and even the Ronald family were making money from the tungsten mines. In order to quickly hand over the money, they specifically ordered Ma Wanjun not to be too strict with the accounts and focus on quickly taking over the tungsten mines. As for some controlled mines, they should also strive to gain control. We should also win over those we cannot control. Hold a local dinner, invite the big guys in the industry to dinner, and at the same time use money to win over local managers. Set up an industry association as soon as possible, formulate industry standards, and arrange your own people into the industry association. This must be done within a month. The effect of one call and hundreds of responses. In the conference room of GFN headquarters, Lu Feng seemed to be in poor condition. He had not had a good rest last night. Looking at the report in his hand, he asked Du Guoying, "Has the market layout and marketing in Suzhou been done well? We advertised on local TV stations, and also in some places frequented by wealthy people. All sales channels have advertised door signs in stores, and at the same time started reservation sales," Du Guoying replied. "We are almost done talking about it in Guangzhou. The internet access fee is 20 million. The other party will not let go of this price. Regarding the free calls to fixed numbers, the other party requires us to subsidize each number. Every additional fixed number will provide free calls. You have to pay 50 yuan," Zhu Lidong said to Lu Feng. "I think this price is acceptable." 50 yuan each, Lu Feng raised his head and frowned. Is there anyone who charges like this? We don't have to worry about whose pocket this money goes into. Anyway, if you pay these 50 yuan, things will be done. Some state-owned enterprises are really difficult to deal with," Zhu Lidong said with a bitter look on his face. "You have to pay for tea wherever you go. 50 is enough, other provinces must also speed up." Lu Feng flipped through the contents of the document and said, "Lower the price a little more." "Reduced," Du Guoying said in surprise. "There is no profit now. If we don't sell 50,000 mobile phones this year, we will lose money." "Then compensate," Lu Feng said solemnly. "This mobile phone war is a comprehensive competition, not only a price war, but also a service. We want to make users happy to use it, with good signals, free fixed numbers, and there are after-sales repairs, and the price should be cheap. Anyone who has made a product knows one sentence: what should we give up? If the quality is good, the service is good, and the guarantee is guaranteed, then the price must be given up. If you want cheap prices, good service, and after-sales service, you have to give up on quality. No matter how you choose a product, you have to give up one or two things. Of course, you can also choose poor quality, high price, good service, no guarantee, and just give up your conscience." If Lu Feng wanted to be comprehensive, he would have to give up profits or even sell at a loss. Zhu Lidong could tell that Lu Feng was a little anxious now, so he said, "Why don't you test the water first? Sell it at the originally set price. Maybe the market response will be very good." "No. Our brand power is not good enough. We can't beat them in a short time. We won't make any money on mobile phones this year, and may even suffer losses. We have one goal, to cultivate the market and cultivate users." Lu Feng closed the folder in his hand. He said, "As long as people use mobile phones and get used to them, even if GFN Electronics goes bankrupt, I can set up a company the next day and continue selling mobile phones. Do you understand what I mean?" Zhu Lidong now understood that Lu Feng not only wanted to crack down on foreign brands such as Motorola and Nokia, but also cultivated domestic users to use domestic mobile phones. As for GFN, he seemed to have given up. "What's the price?" 6,000. Du Guoying and Zhu Lidong were silent when they heard this price. If the network connection fees of each province and the signal tower construction fee in the Jiangsu contract are added, GFN's report will be very ugly at the end of this year. Even before the end of the year, the board of directors may revote. Once Lu Feng becomes an ordinary board member, it will mean completely losing control of GFN. "You can't lose too much," Zhu Lidong whispered. "That's it, there's no need to say anything else," Lu Feng stopped him. 3 days passed by in a flash. The GFN team took over the South African tungsten industry and quickly set up a local tungsten industry association. As for Wall Street and Watanabe, they would not even think about Lu Feng's countermeasures. At most, it's GXN's mobile phone. Someone has already begun to investigate where GFN bought the communication chip. On the 5th day of the Lunar New Year, the streets are still filled with the flavor of the new year. Various advertisements for New Year greetings are played on TV. Advertisements for CuteChildren mobile phones are played repeatedly on local stations in Guangzhou and Jiangsu. Some people at GFeng headquarters have already gone to work early. Well, as for the team responsible for mobile phones, they didn't even take a holiday. GFeng's internal changes have been notified to the board members. John was very dissatisfied with this heavy loss. He called other board members and asked Lu Feng to respond to the photolithography machine. John said on the phone, Lu Feng must take the blame and resign. The board of directors cannot continue to be chaotic, and the board of directors should not be an existence where Lu Feng alone has the final say. Except for Zhuang Yuntian, who expressed support on the phone, other shareholders were silent. This year in Xiangjiang has been extremely difficult for the Feng family. Mr. Feng has fallen into a coma and cannot even be visited in the ICU. Feng Xiao sat in front of the glass outside the door and watched eagerly, while Jenkin beside him said nothing. You heard what the doctor said just now. There is a chance of waking up, but even if you wake up, it won't last long. It will only take a few months. Jenkin reached out and patted Feng Xiao on the shoulder and said, the group is still relatively stable. The biggest problem now is GFeng Group. Lu Feng bought a photolithography machine without telling the board of directors and was seized by the U.S. Maritime Safety Administration. More than 200 million yuan was lost. Schroeder asked him to take the blame and resign. Uncle Kun, do you think my eldest brother and second brother are human beings? Feng Xiao asked dumbly as he sat there, not listening to what Jenkin was saying at all. They only care about money. Even at this moment, they still don't come back to see him. Isn't it because my father prefers me? My second brother called me and said that he would not acknowledge the contents of the will and did not even ask my father. Situation. Feng Xiao lowered his head and said to himself, is there such a person? Half-mother, you shouldn't have too many extravagant hopes. You should focus on the company. This is the foundation of your future. No matter who it is, everyone is seeking profit. Jenkin looked at the ward. Mr. Feng sighed and said, he is the only person in the world who loves you regardless of gain or loss. Jenkin looked at the sluggish Feng Xiao in front of him. He felt that the young man in front of him could not support the current situation. If his two brothers were tigers and wolves, then he could at best be regarded as a sheep. How should we express our stance on GFeng Group? Jenkin asked. Feng Xiao didn't speak, he just rubbed his face with his hands, looking particularly decadent. He stretched out a hand and waved it, and casually said, let him figure it out. On the 6th day of the Lunar New Year, with the broadcast of the Spring Festival Gala, many people have talked about the CuteChildren mobile phone even before it was launched. However, it is not now more than 20 years later. All kinds of news can be checked online, and people can communicate with each other. During the period, we just asked each other what the CuteChildren mobile phone was and why we made free calls. Fashionable consumers in Jiangsu and Guangzhou have noticed the sign displayed at the entrance of the Weputa sales store. Now those who have not lost all their money while playing cards go into the store and ask if it is really free to make calls. They are told that it is a good choice. Sun Mobile made calls to CuteChildren Mobile for free, and it was limited to 2 numbers. Someone came out cursing. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1153. Latest website. GFeng's manufacturers started mass-producing mobile phones a few years ago. Now there are sufficient goods in the warehouses of major stores. There are many people entering the store to make reservations, and there are also many people who criticize the false advertising, but more people choose to make reservations. There are less than 24 hours left before CuteChildren mobile phone goes on sale. Overseas affairs have not spread in China. No one in the board of directors is paying attention to the matter of Lu Feng resigning. Everyone is just staring at CuteChildren eagerly. Feng is on sale this time. Mobile phones are high-end products, and everyone does not approve of domestic production. If Jiafeng opens the market, other manufacturers will inevitably rush to the market, especially Bird. They have already reached an agreement with technology manufacturers in Xiangjiang. As long as Jiexun succeeds, they will immediately mass produce and seize the market. Wu Ying, the person who introduced PHS, was very anxious. The technology introduction was already under contract. The problems he encountered were similar to Lu Feng. Telecom groups did not cooperate with him. Traditional signal stations could not accept PHS frequencies. In 1996, Telecom, the separation from China Mobile, has just ushered in a window of opportunity. On this day, all the bosses are calling each other even at home. Whether they are former opponents or friends, they are all paying attention to this moment. Everyone knows what a purely domestic mobile phone means to the country in this era. Someone was not optimistic about Lu Feng on the phone. Mobile phones are different from home appliances. Mobile phones require the cooperation of large infrastructure. At the same time, the requirements for signal chips are relatively high. As long as the signal power is poor, it is equivalent to holding a brick in the hand. People who know Jiafeng's internal affairs believe that the problem with Lu Feng's failure is not in the product, but within the board of directors. Jiafeng's sports car, known as Flying Spur, is leaving Lu Feng's control and heading towards dismemberment. On this day, the Science and Technology Committee contacted the heads of several large state-owned enterprises and asked them to use their corporate relationships to help find a complete set of photolithography machines that fit the model. Lu Feng ignored the board of directors' request to resign. He held 6 meetings in the morning and went over every detail, leaving overseas matters behind. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Chinese managers of Motorola and Nokia were paying attention to this matter. They had long noticed the competition of Jiexun mobile phones, but now the market is not big, and consumers mainly recognize the brand power, so they are not interested in Jiexun mobile phones. I didn't feel much pressure to start selling mobile phones. In the conference room, Lu Feng said to everyone, "The sales will officially start tomorrow. What I want is a good start. I will get interviews from various newspapers and TV media. I must keep up with the publicity. I must not only tap new purchasing power, but more importantly, seize users of brands like Motorola, Nokia, and Ericsson. I won't talk about whether our sales are good or not, but we must make ordinary consumers think that our sales are good, and let small business owners who have some money and are ready to invest think that domestic mobile phones are very marketable. The market is by no means supported by Jiafeng alone. The domestic mobile phone market must benefit more people before it can grow. In terms of publicity, we must focus on promoting it in places like Huaqiangbei. Only if we can make money, then there is no shortage of smart people or powerful people, and the problems will be solved one by one." When everyone in the conference room listened to these words, they felt that Mr. Lu didn't seem to care whether Jiexun's mobile phone was really popular, he just wanted everyone to think he was popular. Zhu Lidong knew best what Lu Feng wanted to do now, and raised a question, "Mr. Lu, when the mobile phone market was booming, there was still a problem, and that was communication chips. We all purchased millions of goods at a time. What to do with those small bosses? Don't worry, there is no need to worry about these problems for them. As long as there is a market and demand, there will be people who will deal with these problems. We just need to stimulate the market," Lu Feng said to the crowd. "We not only need to make our own mobile phones, but also helping others make mobile phones. Haven't we made a lot of OEM home appliances in the past 2 years? The same goes for mobile phones." What Lu Feng wants is very simple. He just wants to let the no-name machines come out. As long as the people in Huaqiangbei see the benefits, the market will prosper, and a prosperous market can support a chip company. As the meeting ended in the evening, Lu Feng walked out of the conference room a little tired. As soon as he left the door, he was blocked by Gudley. according to the regulations of the board of directors. Lu Feng stared at him and said, "Do you believe that I will find a few people from society to kill you? Mr. Lu, you are a businessman, not a gangster. Schroeder Group has invested so much money. It is necessary for me to represent our interests and represent our rights within the scope of the board of directors." Gudley stared at Lu Feng and said, "Don't you just want me to resign? We'll wait until the board of directors process is over. Let me reiterate, I'm not controlling the management, I'm assisting the management in its work." Lu Feng didn't want to talk nonsense with him, and strode towards go downstairs. Wei Yandan also reported to Lu Feng yesterday that Gudley did not take a break during the new year and was constantly in contact with the middle management of the company. As the company grew, various factions emerged within the company, and there were already many people who opposed Lu Feng. If Gudley can win over enough people, he may shake up the senior management. After all, they are the ones who elect the representatives of the board of directors. In the small election before the board meeting next year, Wei Yandan and others are likely to be deprived of their representative positions. Sometimes Lu Feng would be very passive on the board of directors. At this moment, Lu Feng can no longer control so much. The company is too big and many forces are stirring internally. To balance the forces of all parties, it requires a very high level of management. What's more, Wall Street is still targeting him at every turn, and the current situation is already the best Lu Feng can do. After dinner in the evening and making full preparations, Lu Feng returned home at 10 o'clock in the evening, washed briefly and fell asleep. Early the next morning, the New Year atmosphere in Guangzhou and Jiangsu was still strong. Traces of firecrackers could be seen on the streets and alleys. Some stores opened one after another, but they seemed relatively deserted. In comparison, there were more people at the entrance of Wiputa. The best counter position upon entering originally belonged to Nokia, but now it is also allocated to CuteChildren Mobile. Whether it is the brand at the door or the huge words CuteChildren Mobile on the wall inside, it shows that this mobile phone has an unparalleled status here. In the store, 7 or 8 men in their 30s were leaning on the counter and asking, holding CuteChildren mobile phones in their hands, and all of them seemed hesitant. A mobile phone is not a TV, and it is not a necessity for most people nowadays, not to mention that the price of a mobile phone is not even a fraction more expensive than a TV. "What's the price?" one of the men asked. "I'm not sure about the price yet. I'll have to ask the head office later. I think this is more cost-effective than foreign brands. It cooperates with the Post and Telecommunications Group. Once you apply for network access, you can set 2 numbers as intimate numbers and make calls. It doesn't cost any money," the clerk explained. "I've never heard of this brand. If it breaks and you run away, where will we find it?" another man expressed his worries. "Hey. Don't worry, this is a big company. Does GFN know? All the products in this store are from others. Nokia is a big brand, right? We still cooperate." A woman who looked like a foreman next to her, he walked over, pointed to the maintenance and after-sales booth in the store and said, "It's guaranteed within 3 months, don't worry." The person next to him couldn't hold it anymore after hearing this, and said, "If I can buy it for less than 7,000 yuan, I will buy it. I only have 7,000 yuan left now." The female foreman was just about to continue selling when she was called over by someone in the back room who said she had a phone number. After walking in for a few minutes, she came out and said with a smile, "We have news, it's sold for 6,000. The price of 6,000 yuan undoubtedly shocked several people at the scene. Among them, the elder brother who had the strongest purchase intention immediately bought one, while the remaining people were also hesitant. This kind of scene has been going on in all GFeng stores all morning. Lu Feng didn't arrive at the company until almost noon. The first thing he did when he arrived at the company was to call Zhu Lidong and Du Guoying over and ask, "How was the sales this morning?" Du Guoying looked a little surprised, glanced at Zhu Lidong and said, "Mr. Zhu, tell me. It's not that big of a figure. Let me just say that the data returned by major stores over the phone this morning showed that the sales were pretty good, 900 mobile phones. We have 120 stores in 34 cities in 2 provinces. An average of 7.5 mobile phones were sold per store, and some stores with poor geographical locations sold none. Compared with the shipments of Motorola and Nokia, it is already very high, Zhu Lidong replied. In other words, it's okay to sell 2,000 mobile phones today. Lu Feng didn't have too many expressions about this data. He stood there stunned for a while and said, "Let the media publicize that we sold 2,800 mobile phones in one morning. In total, sales exceeded 16 million, and I made 4 million in 5 hours. Mr. Lu, we have been losing money to begin with. Now we say we make 4 million, will it make consumers think our products are of low value?" Du Guoying reminded. "I don't care what consumers think. I just want people to think that they can make money for free by making mobile phones. After this report comes out, Mr. Zhu, go to various activities and tell people when you meet them that we can open a full set of assembly lines carry out OEM," Lu Feng said to Zhu Lidong, "from product grade, appearance design, built-in operating system, except communication chips, we can do it all. They can put whatever brand they want, and lower the threshold. 100 units can be put on the assembly line." "I know," Zhu Lidong nodded. Communication chips have become Lu Feng's pain at the moment. If there is no problem with the lithography machine, it will take less than a few months for communication chips to be produced by himself. By then, Jiafeng had become a company that was madly exporting various grades of finished mobile phones and accessories to the society, but it was a pity that things didn't work out as planned. As Zhu Lidong announced the news of CuteChildren mobile phone, it quickly attracted great attention in the industry. The sales volume of 2,800 units in one morning really surprised many people. Many people are estimating that CuteChildren mobile phone can sell a few hundred units on the first day. After all, it is sold in 2 provinces. But now this data makes people wonder, are there so many rich people in the country? Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1154. Latest website. For the bosses of large companies, this first-day sales report represents a good start for Jiafeng, but more small bosses who don't understand the situation see the eye-catching daily earnings of millions. The entire report focuses on the mobile phone market, and it directly uses the mobile phone market demand in foreign developed countries to benchmark the domestic market. This creates confusion and makes people think that the domestic mobile phone market demand is huge. So sales were low in the past because foreign investors like Motorola sold them more expensively. Such reports are not only being studied by many CEOs of large companies, but also by several founders of birds sitting in their offices. They previously believed that the annual demand for the domestic mobile phone market is about 100,000 units, with Motorola and Nokia accounting for 100% of the market. 80. But now Jiafeng's survey says that the demand is at least 500,000 units. As long as the price is low enough, 1 million units is not a problem. After reading it, several people agreed that they could not wait any longer and must speed up the process so that waveguide mobile phones can be mass-produced this year. In the evening, Shenzhen Evening News, Yangcheng Evening News, Jinling Evening News, Yangtze Evening News and many other evening news media published Lu Feng's article. The title was, "Lu Feng, Resident Chairman of the Board of Directors of Jiafeng Group, insist on transformation and upgrading, tap the potential of high-end electronic consumption, domestic mobile. The telephone illuminates the way forward in the new century." In this article, Lu Feng revealed that CuteChildren mobile phone sales reached 5,300 units on the first day, and Lu Feng talked about the domestic mobile phone market from various dimensions. He has very good expectations for CuteChildren mobile phones, and emphasized that regarding market issues, Lu Feng believes that the domestic mobile phone market has huge demand. The whole article talks about the development of mobile phones in developed countries, the technological catch-up of GFN in China, then the demand market, and finally, branding. In the last paragraph, Lu Feng wrote about the general commercialization of mobile phones. In the future, mobile phones will completely replace landlines and pagers. This is the inevitable result of technological progress. But now there is a huge vacancy in this market. In the future, more rich people will start from this industry. Birth. The entire article is about 10,000 words long and full of useful information. Many people felt enlightened immediately after reading it, as if the mobile phone industry is a shining gold mine. As long as you pick up a hoe and dig, you can achieve a well-off life with just one hand. A week has passed by in a flash, and the person in charge of Motorola in Greater China has been monitoring the sales of CuteChildren mobile phones these days. Because it is the Chinese New Year period, the sales of Motorola and Nokia are basically stagnant. Lu Feng still releases good sales data to the industry every 3 to 5 times. He usually doubles it several times and reports it to the outside world. He is also afraid that they will send people to the stores to investigate. Lu Feng asks Zhu Lidong to assign tasks to major stores and hires more than 10 people every day. Wandering around the store. After the 15th day of the first lunar month, Du Guoying announced that CuteChildren's first-year goal was to sell 200,000 mobile phones annually. He admitted that this task was stressful, but he would negotiate with many provinces this year. As long as this year if we cooperate with 2 major provinces within China, the task will not be a problem. In the office, Zhu Lidong was dressed in a brand new suit, looking like a groom. He put the souvenirs on the table and said to Lu Feng, "I heard at the banquet today that Bird will mass-produce mobile phones this year. It seems that the wind that blew the past few days was not in vain. After all, it's an accelerant," Lu Feng sighed. According to the original trajectory, Bird Mobile had just officially interviewed in 1999, but now everything is ahead of schedule. What? Zhu Lidong wondered. Nothing, it's good. Has anyone come to us to make mobile phones these days? Lu Feng asked. There really is one. At yesterday's dinner, someone talked to me about mobile phones. I said we can OEM, as long as you can get communication chips. I didn't expect that the other party actually had a way. Zhu Lidong handed Lu Feng a package. Yan sat down and said, "Mr. Lu, you really have all kinds of gods. Although this guy doesn't have much money, he has a lot of connections. His father is from the other side of the river. He ran there before and later married someone there. I have a daughter-in-law, and now I have a younger brother who is doing well and can get her. That's fine. There will be more and more people like this. As long as they are not millions, is it normal for tens of thousands of people to come in every once in a while?" Lu Feng felt relieved when he heard someone starting to inquire. I also asked about the sales of mobile phones. People are still not used to using mobile phones now. The sales volume of 2,000 on the day of launch has dropped by half. Even so, it has caused a market squeeze for Motorola and Nokia. In recent years, with the Asian financial crisis, the country will release water, print a lot of money, and per capita income will grow rapidly. Lu Feng asked Zhu Lidong to tell Wei Yandan that he would increase the production and wholesale of mobile phone accessories and pager accessories this year, and cooperate with the Shenzhen municipal government to accelerate market prosperity. After the 15th day of the first lunar month, Zhang Xiaoyan also returned from the United States with Duoduo. At the same time, Motorola in China also formally faxed a report on CuteChildren mobile phones. Motorola felt a little unbelievable after reading the report. At the same time, some Wall Street investment banks also obtained relevant reports. Eisen stood in Lambert's office and wondered, how poor is the mainland market? It is so big market. How can this Lu Feng succeed in everything he does? Selling at a loss, but there is one thing he did very well. Free calls are a very big gimmick, but I don't know how much water they put into these sales. Lambert flipped through the report, looked at Eisen and asked, "Do you think he will succeed?" "Are you asking about Jiafeng, Lufeng, or the country of China?" Eisen asked. "Huaxia is not good, Jiafeng is not good, Lufeng is not good," Lambert said. Eisen shook his head when he heard this and said, "It's impossible. It's too big. It's really too huge. I can't imagine that on that day, it would be equivalent to the population of 4 American countries." Lambert said nothing, just threw the report in his hand on the table and said, "Stop talking about this, you can go out." After Eisen left, Lambert stared at the report on the table. China's mobile phone market totaled less than $100 million. He would never pay attention to such a market. "Yes, why are you always so successful?" Lambert stared at the folder and muttered to himself, "You were born in the wrong place. If someone like you were born in the United States, you would definitely have a place among the top 10 richest people in the world. This world is so unfair. Just like if I were born in Africa, no matter how hard I try, I wouldn't be where I am today. Birth is really important. It's such a pity for you, what a pity." Lambert felt very sorry for Lufeng. He was very optimistic about Lufeng. Such a person who was particularly sensitive to the market, marketing, and products would be a miracle of wealth as long as he was born in a developed country. Unfortunately, Lambert knows what will most likely happen in Asia next. According to the United States estimates of China, even if Lufeng dies, he may not be able to own a market in a developed country. Zhang Xiaoyan came back, asked about things in her hometown, and then sent Duoduo to school. Lufeng told Duoduo that he would take over the tungsten mine in Africa on her behalf. The little guy kept crying, and finally Lufeng had a meal of KFC with Zhang Xiaoyan. It took a while to calm down. "I heard that the situation in your company is not optimistic," Zhang Xiaoyan said suddenly while sitting on the sofa. "Who said that?" Lufeng felt something and turned around to stare at her. Zhang Xiaoyan now only has the ability to manage small and medium-sized factories. With such a huge structure as Jiafeng Group, even if a report is formed to her, let alone the headquarters, and she couldn't understand the situation of subordinate factories, subsidiaries, holding companies, even the board of directors. "Who can I listen to? Just listen to what the Americans say. I can't see much when I go out." Zhang Xiaoyan was a little afraid to look at Lufeng and said, "I don't know what you are going through, why do you need so much money? You know this sentence. From the beginning of the small workshop to now, Jiafeng doesn't need you to worry about it. Just take care of Washa." Lufeng stood up and asked her, "This time I went to the United States, I didn't ask about surrogacy." "Something about?" "No time, I'm busy taking Duoduo to class," Zhang Xiaoyan said casually. There was something wrong with the atmosphere at home. Lufeng knew who she had gone to see and what happened there. Zhang Xiaoyan also knew that Lufeng knew about it, but no one said anything. They always talked in roundabout ways. The next day Zhang Xiaoyan went to the factory, and Lufeng could feel her indifference to him. The indifference was like two people who were reluctant to part with each other, and suddenly found that the other party had turned around and left decisively. Now Lufeng didn't have time to deal with these emotions. He could only focus on work. He called Ma Wanjun in South Africa that day. They had established relevant associations and applied for various mining standards. "Spend some money there. BN is still very good at work. 80% of the local tungsten mines have joined this association, and they can influence 95% of the local tungsten concentrates. Now the raw materials for the tungsten alloy finishing plant all come from the tungsten mines controlled by Jiafeng. Starting tomorrow, 80% of our tungsten mines will cease production. Mines that we cannot control will ask them to raise prices and push prices to the sky. Don't they like to talk about human rights and humanitarianism? Just tell them, the current mining methods are very inhumane, we must ensure the safety of workers and upgrade equipment, Lu Feng ordered. Understood, Mr. Lu, Ma Wanjun agreed on the other end of the phone. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng thought about it for a moment. She wouldn't like to call him before doing anything, so he would give him a call this time. A call came to Watanabe's office. The secretary answered and said that he was in a meeting. Half an hour later, Watanabe called and asked, Mr. Lu, what's the matter? Can't hold it anymore? I'm sorry to tell you, we don't accept surrender. Surrender? No, 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 I want to tell you good news. I have found a way to kill you, Lu Feng said solemnly into the phone. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1155. Latest website. Watanabe. She was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and burst out laughing randomly. This was definitely the best joke he had heard in the past few years. Do you know who is behind me? Kill us? How? Watanabe said with a smile. Are you preparing for a financial war, a technological war, or a nuclear war? There's no need to be so arrogant. I don't have any backup plans. You'll know in a few days. From Motorola to Goldman Sachs, didn't you rely on crazily suppressing companies and countries in Asia? Lu Feng said to the phone. Don't tell me that you are a beast in my eyes. In the eyes of the Fuzhou people, you are still a beast. Why are you still being scolded? I never care about other people's insults, because insults represent anger, and behind anger is powerlessness. You should think about it. A few years ago when you faced an opponent who was not as good as you, would you have been angry? Now that you are angry at me, it only shows how weak you are. Watanabe said slowly into the phone. I heard that your mobile phones are selling well? This should be your biggest reliance, right? Our mobile phone sales are okay. Motorola's survival space in the country will become smaller and smaller, and we will survive, Lu Feng said solemnly. Your structure is really small, limited to market competition between one company and another. Real entrepreneurs can tell the rise or fall of a country, and can even plan the rise and fall of a country. I can follow this. You said that you will never have the same business structure as me. You can be a rich man, but you will never become an entrepreneur because you are ignorant of current affairs. I stand with the tide of the times. Who is the leader of the times? America, Watanabe said very frankly. Even if you drive away all Motorola and Nokia in the country, how much of the global market will it occupy? I'm not saying that you can't do it, but that your country can't do it, and your nation can't do it. You will always be dominated by us in all fields. Do you know another Japanese American? His name is Fukuyama, and there is a book called The End of History. You should read it carefully. Watanabe's words were full of arrogance and contempt. He spoke very highly of this person who joined the United States like him. He believed that Fukuyama had told the truth about the world, and that he was absolutely right to risk his life to get into the United States. Choosing to stay in Fuzhou, he called Hirata Ichiro, who had helped Lu Feng before, an uncivilized beast. Lu Feng laughed when he heard such remarks and said into the phone, I understand, I seem to understand what kind of person you are. My personal abilities cannot change much, but you can wait and see. I have fluorescent fire, which is incomparable to the light of the sun and the moon. The sudden appearance of fluorescent light can unleash the wrath of a common man. The other end of the phone just chuckled and said nothing more. In Watanabe's eyes, Lu Feng was just struggling fearlessly, just like a brave countryman in front of a strong ship and a powerful gun. The phone was hung up, and Lu Feng just sat there blankly. Sometimes he felt that this person was hateful, but then he thought about it. How many Watanabes are there in the country at this moment? Watanabe doesn't care about Motorola's situation. He no longer works at Motorola. Even if he has not resigned, the global market, the Chinese market is too small. Now, instead of selling high-priced goods, the country is begging for others to import high-end goods. Lu Feng lay in bed at night, thinking that he had the ability to subvert the earth in an instant, but he didn't. Even if he was a reborn person, he still had to live in the era. He couldn't conjure an aircraft carrier, nor could he conjure up the world in an instant. With finance concentrated in the country, there is no way for countries around the world to be their little brothers. Lu Feng looked at the ceiling, blinked a few times, and muttered, "We live like grandchildren." The U.S. Maritime Department launched an investigation into the smuggling of sanctioned contraband. Su Yorong immediately used a lot of connections to pluck it out for himself, spent money to find someone to replace the legal person of the shell company, and transferred the original order, insurance policy, all relevant documents were destroyed, and fake orders and documents were produced at the same time, making the company look like a transit station and unable to trace the final target company. This matter cannot be accomplished by Su Yorong alone, and the domestic high-level officials have also ordered relevant actions. In any case, there is only more than a year left, and he still has control over Xiangjiang. South Africa, South African Tungsten Mining Corporation. This is a 3-story building surrounded by a courtyard. Tropical trees are planted in the yard and various lawns and gardening make the place look particularly peaceful and soothing. On the 3rd floor of the office building, meetings in the room, Ma Wanjun looked at his colleagues who had been here for more than half a month and said, "Now that the Tungsten Ore Industry Association has been established, all major mining industries are basically included in it. More than half of the world's raw tungsten ore has been transported from here, so when we reduce production together, we will inevitably face pressure from all parties." Yesterday, several vice presidents and I went to meet with the top management of South Africa. We want to help them increase their voice and influence in the global tungsten mines, reduce production, and increase prices. The tungsten alloy processing plants here are basically foreign-owned, and they who are its customers? They are the US military, Airbus, Boeing, and various high-precision manufacturing industries. So once production is reduced, it will inevitably cause huge turmoil. What this meeting wants to say is that there is no need for everyone to try not to go out. Your own safety should be the priority at all times. The following mines must take away important parts and components to avoid forced production. Everyone stick to their posts, that's all. Ma Wanjun emphasized the security issue. He was very aware of the vulnerability here, especially in a foreign country where there was nothing he could do if anything happened. At the same time, arrangements are made for the handover of irreplaceable parts of machines from major mines, arrangements for mine protection teams, and good dealings with local police. The money that should be spent must be spent. After the meeting, Ma Wanjun first sent invitation letters to all local tungsten alloy processing companies, hoping that they would come to the meeting and announce something important. This invitation letter was sent in his capacity as the South African Tungsten Mining Association. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, more than 100 people gathered in the banquet hall of a local 5-star hotel. Most of the people who came were white. Everyone was well dressed, holding goblets in their hands and smiling at each other. They looked particularly happy. Upper class. As the banquet began, after the host briefly stated the main theme of the Tungsten Mining Association, Ma Wanjun walked onto the stage, took the microphone, glanced at the crowd, and said, "Dear partners and friends, good afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Ma Wanjun, General Manager of the South African Tungsten Industry. I am honored to invite you to attend today, which is also the official public appearance of the Tungsten Mining Association. Our association was established under the purpose of putting people first, respecting workers, respecting human rights, and respecting freedom more. Under this concept, everyone has come together, and we hope that we can jointly build a beautiful, free, and equal earth." There was sparse applause at the scene. The white people present felt that something was not right. They often heard about human rights and freedom in China, but hearing it here felt strange and had a bad premonition. Everyone in the audience was whispering to each other while holding goblets, and looked at Ma Wanjun from time to time, wondering what he meant. The establishment of this association can better protect the rights and interests of workers, so we issued the first proposal, which is to keep dangerous minds away from workers and return human rights to workers. We all know that the right to life is the greatest human right. Now most of the tungsten mines here do not meet the world's lowest safety standards. Some tungsten mines do not even have mining jackets, mining lamps, or mining boots, and the mining tunnels do not even have detailed geological layer maps, and there is no support. There is a risk of collapse at any time. The geology of the upper layers of the mine tunnels is unclear. As for the geological conditions of the lower layers of the mine tunnels, it is even more unclear. It's not clear in some places. Cement pillars should be poured for support last year, due to unclear geological exploration. Groundwater intruded and returned to tide, causing many soft rock and soft mine collapses. At the same time, there are workers who operate irregularly and have outdated equipment. Some small mines even dig catwalks and rely on the ancient mining method of tying ropes to their bodies to operate. This has caused countless deaths, and we are heartbroken. The people below didn't know whether Ma Wanjun was heartbroken or not, but they were already a little bit heartbroken at the moment. They stared at Ma Wanjun in disbelief. What did he want to do? What does he mean by this? Isn't this always like this in this place? Just a few people die, and the compensation is not expensive anyway. They have noticed something, but they can't believe that such a thing can happen in this land. We are all human beings. You can't ask me to be like me, right? No way. Ma Wanjun felt the eyes of the audience, paused for a long time, and then said, "So, we have decided to stop production for maintenance, putting safety and human rights first. From tomorrow on, we will retain no more than 20% of the output, and the remaining mines all production will be reduced. This time will be used to train workers and replace equipment." It is indeed difficult to make this decision, but when we think of the lives left by us, we have to do this. Today's suspension of production is for a better tomorrow. Production, I believe everyone will understand. The people below are already dumbfounded. Understand? Why should I understand it? You mean, your production will be reduced by 80%, a white man shouted. It's not 80%, it's to keep the output no higher than 20%, Ma Wanjun explained. How many mines do you have? Another person asked hurriedly. Ma Wanjun reported the members of the association, and they were shocked to find that all the corporate suppliers present were in this association. As for when did the South African Tungsten Company become their supplier? It has always been managed by the Ronald family. There was a commotion at the scene. Someone had already rushed to the front row and asked Ma Wanjun how liquidated damages were calculated. The supply quantity was stated in the contract they signed. Human rights? I believe human life is more important than liquidated damages, not to mention it is written in the contract that human rights are the highest priority in everything, Ma Wanjun replied. There is indeed such a sentence in the contract. When they signed the contract with the Ronald family, the other party asked to add it. It was originally an insignificant sentence, but who knew that someone suddenly jumped out and said, "Really treat these people as human beings." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1156. Latest website. The scene was noisy. Everyone opposed the suspension of production and even threatened Ma Wanjun that they would bear all the consequences if production was suspended. Some people at the scene even started to curse without caring about their face. Ma Wanjun ignored these voices and just said, "I wish everyone a happy life," then put down the microphone and left the scene. Joy. Whenever this group of people had the slightest pleasure, they would go crazy. Some reported the situation to the company, while others directly contacted the Ronald family, and some even directly contacted the local municipal government to use their connections or methods to put pressure on them. In South Africa, in the evening, as the sun sets, workers from major mines go up to the wells one after another. The roar of the machine stops, and the whole world becomes quiet. The supervisor comes and announces that production will be suspended from tomorrow, and all workers will be paid at half pay. Way to wait at home. As soon as this news came out, the on-site workers were happy. They could get half of their wages without doing anything. This was a good thing that had never happened before in their lives. Then the person in charge announced another thing, that a mine protection team would be temporarily formed and more than a dozen good people would be needed. In addition to the original half salary, there would also be a high salary. In less than a few hours, many large-scale tungsten mines have all ceased production, and some small-scale tungsten mines are also closing down one after another, leaving only a few small mining tunnels. As soon as Ma Wanjun returned to the company, he received a call from the local municipal government, requiring him to abide by the contract, maintain the ecological environment of the local enterprise, and not suspend production. Ma Wanjun told the local mayor on the phone that this was to better comply with the contract, and they were right. The other party was extremely tough on the phone. If he dared to stop production, the local court would dare to rule against him. When Ma Wanjun heard this, he could only shirk, saying that he couldn't do it. It was the head office's business. As long as the headquarters allowed him to produce, he would just produce. Not only was Ma Wanjun unbearable, but the Ronald family was also threatened. When the contract was signed, their family company enjoyed the kickbacks. Now that this has happened, it's not just a matter of not taking over my control. Ronald's father even received a death warning. Ronald's family knew that this matter could no longer be solved by themselves, so they simply flew overnight to Europe for vacation, leaving a few vice presidents to take care of it. At home, Lu Feng listened to Ma Wanjun's report on the relevant situation on the phone, and told him to make safety preparations and spend the money that should be spent. If some people make a big deal, they must also paint the pie that should be painted. Round. At GFN Group headquarters, Lu Feng held several meetings in the morning. The group building has entered the internal decoration stage. The final phase of the Tianjin factory will also start this year. The TV market continues to expand, achieving growth for 8 consecutive years. Lu Feng asked them at the meeting to continue to take root in the brand and expand sales points in various provinces in the country. The mobile phone market is so big that it will not cause much trouble. The only news is that the Posts and Telecommunications Group has officially started divestment. China Unicom will eventually leave this big family. In the afternoon, in the conference room, Lu Feng briefly explained the situation in South Africa and said to the person in charge of finance, "Now there is an opportunity to make money. It won't be long before the price of tungsten in the futures trading market will skyrocket. Now it is happening when you are going long, you can allocate part of your money to participate in futures." The person in charge of finance saw Lu Feng's expression of embarrassment and said, "Mr. Lu, our financial requirements are not to participate in risks. If we invest a small amount of money, we won't earn much. If we invest a lot of money, the supervisors of the board of directors will report it, and it also needs to be approved by the board of directors." The core executives Wei Yandan, Du Guoying, and Zhu Lidong at the scene looked at me and I looked at you, and they all understood what Lu Feng meant by holding this meeting. Of course Lu Feng knew that people from the board of directors were responsible for supervising the finances, and he also knew how unhappy John was with him now, so he could only get enough of this kind of thing. However, the news revealed is that the price of tungsten in the futures market is about to skyrocket. Companies cannot invest for various reasons, and no one will care about the individual. This is equivalent to sending a huge red envelope to everyone present. This is the difficulty of enterprises under the board of directors system. The ship is turned around in a disaster. Lu Feng looked very helpless and sighed, I made some investments during the Chinese New Year, and all the money in my hand was spent. I want to. Is it okay to borrow some money from the company? No problem, Zhu Lidong was the first to say, it would be too unkind if you don't agree to this matter. I've been a little tight lately. Lu Feng looked at Zhu Lidong, then at the others, and said, forget it, you two, wait until I return the money, and you can borrow it again. Of course, the person in charge of finance knew what Mr. Lu wanted to do, and nodded, it should be no problem, but it will require interest. Okay, with interest, is it okay to borrow 100 million, Lu Feng asked. US dollars or RMB, finance said with a guilty conscience. US dollars. It's a bit difficult. According to the company's financial regulations, borrowing of more than 50 million US dollars requires the approval of the board of directors to ensure there is no risk and there is collateral, finance said awkwardly. Then 50 million, Lu Feng said helplessly. There must also be collateral or a guarantor. Lu Feng glanced around, pointed at Wei Yandan and the others and said, they guarantee it for me. Only then did Zhu Lidong and others suddenly realize that there was a price to pay for allowing themselves to drink soup. Should they be taken advantage of? Wei Yandan couldn't help but laugh as she sat aside. It was extremely difficult to ask Mr. Lu for free, so the few of them could only sign the guarantee agreement obediently. After leaving the conference room, Lu Feng said to the person in charge of finance, help me open an account at the London Futures Exchange and then buy all the tungsten ore. It's a personal matter, so troublesome. As soon as Lu Feng left, Zhu Lidong ran up to him, counted all his funds in detail, asked the other party to help him open an account, and bought them together. Then the others did the same thing. Ma Wanjun unplugged the phone line that night and had a peaceful sleep. The next day, the ore truck that was running like a dragon suddenly stopped. They thought that this South African tungsten mine that suddenly appeared did not dare to stop production. 2/10 of the mineral material hit them in the face. In less than 2 days, more than a dozen companies sued the South African tungsten mine to the local court, and Ma Wanjun also received some death threats. On Wall Street, well-informed people within major investment banks have learned about the situation of South Africa's tungsten mines. In a conference room, a manager excitedly said to several people, if this news is true, then we will be in the futures market all the time. Here's your chance to become famous. A team member in his 30s looked at him and said, I don't think this is a good thing. It is because someone maliciously stopped production after forming a local monopoly. You must know that most of the tungsten alloys in our country come from there. It should be passed this news up to avoid greater losses at the national level. Are you mentally ill? What does the loss of the country have to do with you? The more people know this news, the more the futures market will rise. We should buy it now. As long as we make money, others will die. Live, what do you care about us? I agree, if the information is reliable, I can mortgage my house. We have to tell the country and let the country investigate. Tungsten alloy is the core mineral for manufacturing high technology. Shut your mouth. I don't care what the earth is like. I don't care what this country is like. As long as you give me money, I don't care about anything. Do you understand? The manager stared at the team member with wide eyes and said, put aside your patriotic enthusiasm, what we have to do now is to investigate and confirm that the reduction in tungsten mine production is not temporary, so I booked some tickets to South Africa and leave immediately. On the same day, 3 teams from Wall Street boarded a plane to South Africa. They were all well-informed financial people. It is already February, the weather in Shenzhen has begun to warm up, and the feeling of the new year has completely dissipated. People have begun another busy year, and the free mobile phones that were talked about in the streets some time ago have also been left behind. But the market in Huaqiangbei began to see various wholesale mobile phone accessories, wholesale batteries, and wholesale casings. Some people found that these accessories were sold as if they were dismantling a mobile phone. There were even displays and motherboards. In addition to the ones on the motherboard, the communication chips are basically complete. Some people have already discovered the business opportunities and started buying in batches. There are no buttons, just ordering goods. A woman in her 30s or 40s leaned on the counter and asked, "Mr. Kui, why did you buy these? Are you really assembling a mobile phone? This thing lacks a communication chip. See the empty space on the motherboard. Is there a piece of it? You can't make calls without that thing." Someone was looking at these parts when they first came out. Later, they found that they were missing parts. These are for people who repair mobile phones. Does GFN Group know? Recently promoted that Jiexun phone. I know, Mr. Liu, I know him. He's an old acquaintance. He's my cellmate. Kui Ning sat there and lit a cigarette and said, "Do you know how he got rich?" I introduced him. The relationship between us. Really? I didn't realize that you still have such connections. The woman asked curiously, "Why did you buy this? Didn't you realize that these accessories are quite cheap? It costs 5,000 yuan to buy a new mobile phone when it's all assembled." "Where can I find such cheap accessories?" Kui Ning said with a smile. "The key point is that it's useless, it's missing something. How many people in China know that this thing has a communication chip for making phone calls? What do I do? I'm just a hoarder. I assemble this thing and sell it to the north. I say that I stole it and will look for it later. Whoever comes for you will go," Kui Ning said proudly. "Oh my God, you are lacking in virtue," the woman laughed and scolded. "Am I wicked? You can't make money without being wicked these days. Damn it, Lu Feng owes me money and he still hasn't paid me yet." Kui Ning cursed and greeted the woman, telling her to remember to give it to him if she had something. Keep it and leave after saying that. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1157. Latest website. Regarding mobile phone accessories, Lu Feng is also worried that his prices are too low and some people will buy them in large quantities, so he has been controlling shipments. Zhu Lidong has communicated with the municipal government several times since he arrived in February, hoping to stimulate a group of small and micro enterprises or small workshops through subsidies. Lu Feng also went to several meetings to discuss his ideas. The city said that the current production process was not up to standard and the thresholds for various assembly lines were high, making it impossible to create the market environment Lu Feng envisioned. Lu Feng also felt helpless for such an answer. After going back and pondering for a few days, he decided to let the country promote this matter. Lu Feng contacted the Science and Technology Committee and expressed his thoughts. He believed that the state subsidized chip research and development, and all the money was wasted. This model is not acceptable. Lasts and has no effect. In the letter, Lu Feng also wrote a proposal for a large fund for the semiconductor industry, focusing on the construction of mobile signal towers. He believed that landline phones are a process of the development of the times. We should directly skip landline phones and move towards mobile communications to catch up by leaps and bounds. After the letter was mailed out, Lu Feng spent a lot of effort to get the people from the Science and Technology Committee to push it to the Machinery Department. As the matter began to be discussed internally, various voices began to appear. Lu Feng later visited Beijing many times, and finally came to Beijing promote the implementation of this matter in 1997. The process is rugged and difficult, so I won't go into details here, I dare not. Lu Feng knew very well that if there was no end to the problem at the national level, it would be impossible to expand the market just by relying on the self-development of some companies. If he wanted to change the direction of history, he must persuade the country to build major infrastructure in advance. So where would the money come from? Lu Feng already knew that the chip subsidy was a failure, so he simply stopped subsidying and used it to invest in signal towers. This also attracted a lot of abuse and attacks on him. In London, the futures trading market opened normally that day. After 10 minutes, the price of tungsten began to strengthen. The short side felt that something was not right and immediately sold orders to suppress it. However, the funds for the long position seemed to be very strong and slowly increased little by little. No matter how many orders are thrown, they will be eaten. The trading volume of tungsten is considered a niche in commodity futures trading, and the sudden influx of funds has attracted the attention of Wall Street and European financial companies. People from several exchanges made a rough calculation and found that the funds for long tungsten mining in one morning were at least hundreds of millions of dollars. The so-called futures are orders, future orders. To give a simple example, building futures, if your family is a developer, you are afraid that there will be no buyers after the house is built, so you go to the platform to trade, even if your family does not even have a construction team now. You can also place an order on it and wait until the building is completed for delivery. There will be a lot of fluctuations from the time the order is placed to the delivery. You think the price of this house will increase, you buy it, and after you buy it, news comes out that the best schools, the best hospitals, and the best are planned here. The commercial plaza was 10,001 square meters when you bought it, but now it has increased to 100,000. If you sell it directly with the contract in your hand, you will make 1,000% profit. What is emptiness? Still using the example of a house, your neighborhood costs RMB 100,000 per square meter. You want to sell the house, but you find that you can't sell it for RMB 100,000 per square meter. You feel that there is a problem in this market and there is a bubble. For example, the real estate market is not good. For example, you borrowed the contract for a part of the house in your community and promised them to return it in 30 days with a monthly interest of 5%. After getting the contract, you immediately sold it at a low price. You calculated it as 80,000 square meters, 60,000 square meters, and 50,000 square meters respectively. For external sales, people in your community saw the house prices falling so fast and quickly joined the team to sell their houses. At the same time, news came out that the school district in this community was about to be sold out. Everyone was vying to sell it, and a month later the price became 20,000 square meters. You repurchase the house you sold before for 20,010 square meters, and give it to the owners of your community plus 5% interest. This is called emptying. What is sitting on the bank? A developer sells a house, but no one buys it. He hires a bunch of people to rush to buy it. Among the 10 people, you are the only real owner. He announces a price increase the next day, and then the price increases every 3 to 5. People see the increase getting more and more outrageous, and they can't help but go in and buy. This is the dealer. What is capital allocation? Capital allocation means that if you don't have enough money to buy a house, you can borrow money from the bank. This is capital allocation. The futures market is basically a high leverage capital allocation. What are leaks? Forget it, simple science popularization. Let's get back to the topic. The financial director of Jiafeng opened an account for Lu Feng and several others, allocating 50% of the capital to buy. Futures traders in London and Wall Street were puzzled by the fluctuations in tungsten prices. The production areas of tungsten are relatively concentrated, and the price is stable all year round. There must be reasons they don't know behind such a large purchase. Record the situation and report it as soon as possible. In South Africa, Ma Wanjun watched several groups of people smoking cigarettes in front of him in his office without saying a word. These groups of people claim to be fund managers of Wall Street investment banking companies. We want to know if production has been suspended now and when production will be resumed. What is the tungsten ore gap during this period? Will production capacity be expanded after production is resumed? A large number of futures tungsten will be delivered within 3 months. Are you taking any action in the futures market? The other party asked questions one after another. Is there any inventory? Will the price increase? I'll say it again, we are just a producer of tungsten ore, we are not involved in the futures trading of finished tungsten, and there is no need to answer your questions. Ma Wanjun stared at them and said, get out now. The three teams were kicked out. One of the fund managers very cleverly took out a wad of US dollars from his bag, quietly stuffed it into Ma Wanjun's pocket, and asked in a low voice, just tell me if you can recover within 3 months production? Please. I don't know, I'm waiting for the notification too. After speaking, Ma Wanjun took the money and closed the door. This group of people stood guard at the door of the company, catching people and questioning them whenever they came out. They stayed there for 2 full days, sorted out the information they got, and learned that this company is controlled by China's GFN Group, and the major shareholder of GFN Group is Schroeder's Group. After some serious and rigorous reasoning, they came to a shocking result. Europe wants to compete head-on with the United States in metal energy. They don't think that a small GFN group can do such a thing, not to mention that South Africa is now the leader of the African continent and is rich in minerals, making it a target for countries around the world to woo. These people immediately asked their fund companies to do long tungsten mines and reported the matter at the same time. As soon as the London Stock Exchange opened in the afternoon, the price of tungsten quickly increased by 4%, becoming the most dazzling stock in the market. If talents are the most valuable in the 21st century, then news is the most valuable at the end of the 20th century. The investigation of these fund managers was quickly reported. After the senior management received this information and studied it for a long time, they always felt that this time things were not simple. First of all, South Africa was once a British colony. After independence in 1961, it was still secretly controlled. After Mandela came to power, he chose to be independent and develop. The United States and Europe invested a large number of companies here and controlled various mineral resources. It can be said that this is the United States. A place to compete with Europe. This is also the reason why Lu Feng is not afraid of pressure from the United States. He asked Ma Wanjun to pay attention to his life safety because at this time, South Africa has begun to experience chaos due to the influx of a large number of refugees. In a large conference room, more than a dozen important figures on Wall Street were present. Everyone frowned as they looked at the information in their hands, while Lambert looked relaxed. It was obvious that this was Lu Feng's counterattack. Based on the content of this information in my hand, I cannot understand the purpose of convening so many people for a meeting. Lambert was the first to speak. The rise in tungsten prices in the futures market is our suppression of GFN Group and the other parties' means of retaliation. Just dismantle the newly formed Tungsten Mining Association. A congressman diagonally opposite shook his head and said, I think this matter is very serious. This is a resource war. Obviously this is a test arranged by Europe. As long as we don't respond, then gold mines and diamonds will follow, the production of various resources will appear one after another, which will become South Africa and Europe's bargaining chip and strategic containment against us. Once we fall into passivity, we will pay more in terms of energy prices, so we should be tough in the face of this kind of temptation. Now it is up to private enterprises to fight back. Then at the national level, if it still doesn't work, I think we can send aircraft carriers past. Lambert was dumbfounded when he heard this. This was just revenge by Lu Feng. Why was there still a war? What does Europe have to do with it? I also think that Mr. Lambert's pattern is too small. This kind of thing that looks carefully arranged at first glance cannot be done by a company. There must be European arrangements behind it. According to my information, Schroeder the group is the major shareholder of this company, and the British still have a great influence in South Africa. Is it possible that so many mineral acquisitions were completed without much movement, without the assistance of the British, said another person. As soon as this logic came out, everyone nodded in agreement, but what they never thought was that in order to obtain low-cost raw materials, they suppressed the price of local tungsten ore and squeezed profits again and again. The Ronald family did not want to done. Lu Feng only spent more than $100 million to complete the acquisitions. The process was extremely simple. These people gathered around the table and chatted more and more deeply, from resource competition to African strategy, and then global layout. In addition, Schroeder had invested in Jiafeng many years ago, and Lu Feng secretly bought mines. This was simply a good show of secretly plotting against Chen Kang. Thinking about it makes people feel chills on the back of their necks. You must know that South Africa has 60% of the world's gold reserves, and its reserves of various mineral resources rank among the top in the world. If the Europeans take over, the euro will be linked to gold again. The impact would be huge. Lambert was sitting there and didn't want to talk anymore. These people were getting more and more outrageous. Latest website. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1158. Latest website. The discussion at the scene was very intense. Most people believed that this was an undercurrent of competition and must be taken seriously. As for Lu Feng, they were just throwing it out to test the reality. You must know that the total investment of the United States in South Africa exceeds $50 billion, and most of it is in various mining developments, and the tungsten alloy processing plant is one of the important strategic resources. Lambert tried to change the topic several times, but the people at the scene were obviously on top, and he had no choice. In the end, the meeting decided to start from two levels. The top management warned South Africa and asked them to put pressure on resuming tungsten ore production as soon as possible. On the private side, Goldman Sachs, as a representative, communicated with Schroeder Group and warned it. After the meeting, Lambert sighed helplessly and got into the car. He didn't know what these people would do with this matter, but he could feel that as that country dissipated, these people were now reckless. Liao Jin wanted to find an opponent to give them a try. It seemed that this was the only way to prove their worth. 2 days later, a phone call was made to South Africa's senior leaders. The tone of the phone call was very unkind, asking them to fulfill their promises. If they turned to Europe, it would be an irreversible disaster. Naturally, the South African side was not cowed and retorted. As for the resumption of production at the tungsten mine, the South African side said that they would decide whether to resume production. They did not need Americans to teach them how to do things. Moreover, the Tungsten Mine Association also acted in this way. This production shutdown and maintenance was carried out based on human rights and ensuring life safety as the first principle. Goldman Sachs also sent people to contact the Schroeder Group, hoping that they would not interfere too much in South Africa, let alone dream of colonization in the new era. In the conference room, John sat there listening to these words and his head was full of questions. The group president stared at him and asked, "Didn't the investment in Jiafeng Group be said to be a strategic investment in high-end manufacturing? Why did we go to South Africa to buy mines?" Went. Now people on Wall Street think we are manipulating mineral energy and suspect that we are authorized. What do you say? John's old face turned red. He really wanted to say that he was wronged. This was all going nowhere. He couldn't possibly be responsible for anything that happened to the companies he invested in, right? So if Lu Feng kills people and sets fire tomorrow, do we have to ask, is it Europe's strategy? Do you know about South Africa's investment in mining? The group president saw his dilemma and softened his tone. I didn't see it in the relevant reports, John replied. You have invested so much money and you don't even know where the money has been spent? What about supervision? It's my problem, I will make sure to correct it properly. John knew that he had caused a big trouble, and asked the group president, What should I do now? What should I do? If I reply that this is not our strategy, the other party will think that we are cowardly. If I reply that this is our strategy, isn't this just picking up shit from outside and making a living? The group president said angrily. What did you say? John asked curiously. The attitude is tough, the topic is arbitrary, and he doesn't know the last question. With so many tungsten mines out of production, the tungsten alloy production there will definitely be affected, and the price of tungsten futures will definitely skyrocket. Since this matter can't be hidden, let's make a fortune in futures. John was silent for a while and said. Wall Street doesn't say that we are causing trouble. If they say something, we will give in. What do Goldman Sachs, Morgan, and Merrill Lynch think of us? The president of the group seemed helpless when he heard this. This matter is equivalent to two leaders in school. One of them comes over for no reason and says that you are making trouble for others and you'd better restrain yourself. The other leader can't explain it. To say it wasn't me is too cowardly. How will you mix in the future? What do other people at school think? What do chickens think? What do you think of the goose? The idea mentioned by John is very good. They must be tough. They did not do it. But since you dare to come and ask, then don't blame me for causing trouble in futures. The group president agreed with John's idea and first went long on tungsten ore futures, and then released the news to let Wall Street funds come in to take over. John left the conference room and the first thing he did when he returned to his office was to call Lu Feng. At this moment, the anger in his heart could no longer be stopped. He wanted to remove Lu Feng from the position of the board of directors as soon as possible. Originally, he wanted to ease it. The relationship between the two parties has now become tense for him. In China, at 11 o'clock in the evening, Lu Feng had just finished taking a shower. Zhang Xiaoyan put on her pajamas and sat on the sofa reading the newspaper. Her small villa had been decorated and ready to move there at any time. What are you moving here for? Lu Feng wiped his hair and said, how lonely it is to live there alone. It's deserted, and there's no one to warm the bed. My mother called me and said, did you go on a blind date during the Chinese New Year? Zhang Xiaoyan put down the newspaper and asked. We fell in love, and you moved away just because of this. Lu Feng came over and sat next to her, put his arm around Zhang Xiaoyan's shoulders and said, that girl is very snobbish, how can she compare with you? What's the relationship between us? My good roommate for many years. When I finish this period of time, you can also put aside the things at hand, and let's go out for a trip, eat well, have fun, see the thousands of worldly affairs, and savor the bliss of life. Zhang Xiaoyan was indeed a little moved when she heard this, and sighed, by the time you finish your work, I have heard this so many times. Besides, we are all divorced and living under the same roof, so we can live without embarrassment. It's boring. Where is the boring thing? Isn't life like this, good or bad, living without embarrassment? Let me tell you. Jingle bell. The phone on the table rang. Lu Feng picked it up and asked, who is this? Lu Feng. People like you don't deserve to stay in the company. You'd better get out of the company now. Lu Feng hung up the phone without finishing listening. Who is it? Zhang Xiaoyan asked. Although she couldn't understand English, she could tell that the tone on the other end was very irritable. No one, just a good brother from before. Lu Feng fooled casually, patted Zhang Xiaoyan on the shoulder and said, it's getting late, you should go to bed early. Zhang Xiaoyan hummed, stood up and walked upstairs. The phone rang again. Lu Feng hung up and stood up to go upstairs, but the phone rang again. Take it, no matter what happens, we have to talk it over. Zhang Xiaoyan turned around and said. Lu Feng didn't say anything. He stepped forward and unplugged the phone line. As soon as he returned to the bedroom, his phone rang again. He had no choice but to answer it. Can you communicate well? If you can communicate well, we will have a chat. If not, forget it, Lu Feng asked John. Lu Feng, I have worked in an investment bank for more than 20 years and have invested in hundreds of companies. You are the most hummed up person I have ever seen. Your management of the company and your disregard for the rules are so arrogant that it makes people feel sick. Disgusting, John shouted angrily. I vaguely remember that in New York, when we met in the bathroom, you were not like this. You have changed. We were good brothers at that time, Lu Feng sighed with emotion. How long has it been? Time flies so fast. You've already started to talk harshly to each other like this. Is it interesting for you to mention this? Didn't you lie to me in the first place? If you hadn't used Lewinsky as bait, would I have been fooled by you? Later, you used high-end manufacturing as a cover. What have you done in the past few years? John questioned. What do those overseas R/U0026D centers do? How much has the domestic market share of GFeng's products increased in the past 2 years? Are you blind? If it hadn't been suppressed, how much would GFeng's overseas market have increased? I can't do it. You can. You can, so awesome. You are working against the United States, you are trying to get me to enter the global market, and you still blame me? Why don't you look at yourself? Lu Feng stood outside the room, leaning against the fence and scolded, if I do, you believe that GFeng can sweep across Europe by cooperating with the Americans? John was stunned by the question, which made him speak as if he was incompetent. Stop telling me this. What's going on with the tungsten mine in Africa? Do you know what you did? With such a huge amount of money to buy the tungsten mine, why didn't you write it in the annual report? GFeng Group's financial situation is how bad is it? Let me tell you, starting from tomorrow, I will send an audit team from Europe to review the accounts of GFeng Group, John said viciously. If there are serious discrepancies in the accounts, you will be imprisoned. Bar. Am I in jail? Why wasn't the money for buying the tungsten mine included in the annual report? A total of $276 million was spent. Because I was afraid of attracting unnecessary attention, my daughter held it on behalf of me, and the rights to income and enjoyment they are all under the name of the company, and the entire acquisition was listed separately and placed in the envelope under the annual report at that time, Lu Feng said. Envelope. John remembered it, and there really was an envelope. When I gave the annual report, there was a lot of mess, such as a personal show of corporate executives, the company's 1996 development roadmap, a list of group management, and even one that said Mr. Lu's hard work 1996. They were all useless things. John threw these fancy things aside, including a small envelope underneath. He didn't dare to open it, because he was afraid that it would tell how hard Mr. Lu worked hard, defied all odds, and worked hard to make plans for the board of directors. Welfare. This should be put in the corporate asset sheet. What does putting it in an envelope mean? John asked angrily. The board of directors doesn't stipulate that you can't put part of the company's asset statement in an envelope, Lu Feng asked back. You don't stipulate it. You can hold a board meeting and everyone will vote by a show of hands. As long as it is passed, it will be passed in the future. Don't put it in the envelope. You, John collapsed completely. You don't look good, do you blame me? If you want to send an audit team, you can send one, but don't call me again, I want to sleep. Lu Feng hung up the phone immediately after saying that. John sat there listening to the busy signal on the phone, thinking about the thing in the envelope, and felt extremely aggrieved. Why did he choose such a grandson? At this moment, he had decided in his heart that Lu Feng must be removed from his seat on the board of directors. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1159. Latest website. The unusual movements of the London Exchange's tungsten futures for several consecutive days have attracted the attention of all parties. With constant news in the market, some people began to continue to increase their bets, and the price rose by 50% in just a few days. The price of tungsten ore on the New York Stock Exchange is also rising, and a large number of funds on Wall Street have taken notice, including Soros's Quantum Fund and Robertson's Tiger Fund. The two of them were trading tungsten futures on the New York Exchange while also entering the London Exchange. The office was busy. Soros was looking through the latest information in his hand, secretly thinking about how to cheat Schroeder Group. Judging from the current news, all tungsten mines in South Africa are controlled by a man named Lu Feng. As long as the tungsten mines continue to cease production, the price will skyrocket. Although it has increased by 50%, compared with large funds, this increase is not enough to allow funds to escape safely. If Schroeder wants to invest enough money to take over, he must give a force majeure reason. The phone on the table rang. Soros picked it up and asked, "Who is that?" "It's me, Lambert. I have to remind you that the suspension of tungsten mine production in South Africa is just a revenge measure by Lu Feng. He can resume production at the tungsten mine at any time. Don't give up easily. You will lose all your money." Lambert helped him analyze tungsten ore, global tungsten ore production distribution, tungsten alloy production volume, demand, reserves in various countries, etc. "I have decided to enter the London Stock Exchange. Don't worry. As long as the price goes up, it is not up to him whether the tungsten mine resumes production," Soros said confidently. "Robertson and I are very excited about this transaction. Have confidence." Lambert tried to persuade him for a long time to no avail. At this time, whether Lu Feng provoked the incident was his own fault or whether the Schroeder Group was behind it, it no longer mattered. What mattered was that they just wanted to fight. "Since you have already decided, I won't say anything more," Robert said helplessly. "By the way, can you give me Lu Feng's contact information?" Soros asked. After getting Lu Feng's contact number, Soros hung up the phone, picked up the internal phone next to him, and called the trader directly. "London Stock Exchange, tungsten concentrate, buy $10 million US, no capital allocation." At the same time, Tiger Management also bought tens of millions of US in tungsten ore futures on the same day. The price of tungsten ore rose by 7% that day, attracting reports from major financial media. In the morning, the financial director called Lu Feng and told him that Lu Feng's account had made a profit of $50 million US and asked him if he wanted to sell it. Lu Feng didn't sell, but wondered, what are these people on Wall Street doing? You shouldn't call yourself to discuss this matter. If there is a problem with the tungsten alloy, the impact will be huge, and high-end manufacturing costs will skyrocket. However, there is no news at all so far. Even if Lu Feng tried his best, he would never come up with a scenario where the two gangs were fighting each other. It was already the end of February, and competition in the domestic mobile phone market was extremely fierce. Motorola and Nokia launched various activities one after another, but there was still no way to deal with the low price of Jiaxun mobile phones. During this period, Almi even called Lu Feng twice to express his hope. The two parties should strengthen cooperation and let Lu Feng increase the price. In the conference room, Du Guoying reported the sales situation in the past month. According to the current situation, there should be no problem selling 3,000 mobile phones per month, but the losses are indeed severe. Basically, you will lose more than 1,000 yuan to sell a mobile phone. This loss is still bearable. Losing tens of millions in 1 year is nothing. Lu Feng looked at the report and asked Zhu Lidong, "How is Huaqiangbei?" "There is still a problem because the price of accessories is too low. Recently, a group of people in Huaqiangbei assemble our mobile phones and sell them to the north." Zhu Lidong sighed and said, "A few days ago, we teamed up with the Shenzhen police to crack down on a second-hand dealer. He said he knows you, his name is Kuining." Lu Feng was stunned for a moment when he heard the name, then shook his head and said, "I don't recognize him." "It seems like it's a bluff," Zhu Lidong said to himself. "How many years will he be sentenced to, Lu Feng asked. I heard that the crime was serious this time, because he was reselling unusable mobile phones, which involved fraud, and he had no qualifications. He couldn't get out of it after 10 years. By the way, he had a lot of ours in his hands. If you don't hand over your mobile phone, you probably want to take it out and sell it, Zhu Lidong muttered. It was only 2006 when it came out, Lu Feng sighed. Let's not talk about this anymore. How was the negotiation in Zhejiang? Lu Feng asked. Mr. Du and I came back the day before yesterday. They want to cooperate, but their signal towers don't have much coverage. A man named Wu Ying is talking to them. I heard that it is the technology from Fuzhou, and the signal towers are specially built. Cheap, Zhu Lidong said. Let's talk as soon as possible and tell them that we can pay to build signal towers. It's the same as the Jiangsu model, except that we don't have to spend network fees. We want 10 years of income rights from the signal towers, Lu Feng ordered. The company is getting bigger and bigger, and as long as it doesn't seek death, it will become more and more stable. For Jiafeng, the entrepreneurial period has passed. Now Jiafeng is a big guy. Wei Yandan is responsible for daily affairs and grand strategy. Fewer and fewer. Lu Feng finally raised the price of mobile phone accessories to avoid the return of inmates. At the same time, he also noticed that fakes of various Jiafeng products began to appear in Huaqiangbei, from TVs to VCDs to mobile phones. Everything. When he heard Zhu Lidong talk about this, Lu Feng expressed that he was relieved and that this was a good start. The internal situation has stabilized, but the external problems have not been solved. John still sent an audit team, which has been reviewing Jiafeng's accounts during this period. They first found out about the loan of $50 million. Lu Feng faced John. He was also very frank in his inquiry, saying that he had bought tungsten ore futures and asked him to help raise the price, which made John very angry. The price of tungsten ore was still rising, and it was March in the blink of an eye. Lu Feng still didn't get the call he wanted. Not only was there no news from Lambert, but Shi Watanabe also seemed to have disappeared. The weather started to get warmer. Lu Feng was sitting in the leisure area set up in front of his house, blowing the sea breeze. Duo was squatting next to him, playing with the dog he picked up from someone's house. It's already been March and nothing has been accomplished, Lu Feng sighed. Dad, what do you want to do this year? Duo raised his head and asked. 3 things: let the chips be produced. Let the company stabilize. Let the market get better, Lu Feng said casually. Then why do you want to take my mine? Duo asked. That's not a mine, that's a dog beating stick. It's just in your name and belongs to the company's property. Dad has a doubt now, Lu Feng frowned. What doubts? The dog beating stick was thrown out. I didn't hear the dog barking, Lu Feng said confused. I missed it. Duo touched the dog on his hand and comforted him, saying that he was not hitting it. It's impossible to miss. Dad's skills are quite good. Lu Feng leaned on the chair and muttered, it's impossible. What happened here? I don't know what happened. I only know that my mine is gone. Now I am embarrassed to use the nickname mine owner in school, Duo shouted. Lu Feng disliked her for being noisy, so he turned to look at her and said, stop saying a few words and return the dog to me. You can go back to your room and do your homework. Changhong, a blue folder was placed on the chairman's desk. It was about a company in the Czech Republic that went bankrupt and had a set of 90% new lithography machines for sale. After a while, 7 or 8 people came into the office. Most of Changhong's senior managers were there, chatting away. I think this matter should not be reported. Jiafeng Group is our competitor. Besides, who is Lu Feng? Why should we help him? I also think there is no need to do this. To put it bluntly, if Jiafeng goes bankrupt, it will be the most beneficial to us. Now the TV market is stable, but no one has much profit. If Jiafeng goes bankrupt, The freed up market share is enough for companies in all industries to have a grand event. Everyone was chattering, and most people felt that there was no need to help Jiafeng. It was originally a matter issued by the Science and Technology Committee. Finding the lithography machine was a matter of friendship, but not finding it was a duty. It's better to report it. In any case, the lithography machine does not produce TV sets and has no direct competition with us. The new chairman who was sitting in the seat said, Lu Feng has done a lot of things. Competition is competition. At critical times, we still have to look at the overall situation. I will call and report it and have someone contact the person in charge of this company. A few hours later, Lu Feng received a call from the Science and Technology Commission, saying that one of Chang Hong's partners in Saudi Arabia had contacted a company in the Czech Republic through a relationship. They had a set of photolithography equipment, but the company went bankrupt and only one was left. The factory building needs to be transported back by yourself. Okay, special thanks to brother Chang Hong, and thank you to brother Saudi Arabia. You've worked hard too, Lu Feng said excitedly into his cell phone. At what price do they plan to sell it? After some communication, the matter was finalized. Lu Feng called the chairman of Chang Hong and thanked him. However, another difficult question loomed in front of him: how to transport it back. Lu Feng didn't care about that. He was in a good mood at the moment. He went out to buy vegetables and cooked 3 or 4 dishes after not cooking for a long time. Zhang Xiaoyan was surprised when she came back in the evening and saw this table of dishes. Why do you think of cooking? Zhang Xiaoyan asked, putting the bag aside. Lu Feng explained the matter briefly. Zhang Xiaoyan was stunned for a moment and said, Chang Hong's partner in Saudi Arabia? How can a company selling TVs have a Saudi partner? Don't let others deceive you, let alone you. The two companies are still in a competitive relationship. Latest website.